Are we surprised at all with what we saw today? There was no defense from this team in the preseason, and there was no defense from this team tonight. We're going to play this game again in this season. I'm frustrated, folks.
The Indiana Fever entered this season carrying more expectation than any team in recent WNBA history. The off-season additions were widely regarded as transformative. The ticket demand was unprecedented. The attention both from casual observers and from longtime followers of the league was sustained in a way the WNBA had rarely seen outside of its founding years. By nearly every external measure, the conditions were in place for a meaningful run. What has unfolded on the court tells a different story. Through the opening stretch of the season, the Fever have struggled with consistency in ways that go beyond the ordinary adjustment period for a roster with new pieces. The losses are not the primary concern for most observers. Losing is inherent to competition, and roster integration takes time. What has drawn scrutiny is the nature of those losses, the defensive lapses, the stagnant offensive sequences, and the visible disconnect between the talent on the floor and the product being produced. When analysts and fans attempt to locate the source of those problems, one name surfaces with consistent regularity: head coach Stephanie White. White returned to Indianapolis with a resume that included prior success in the league and an intimate familiarity with the franchise. The expectation was that she would build on the foundation established in recent seasons while adapting the system to the expanded personnel at her disposal. Midway through the season, the returns on that expectation remain, at best, inconclusive. The clearest evidence of the problem is structural. The Fever do not have an identifiable defensive scheme. On any given possession, opposing guards are able to operate in the mid-range and at the rim with limited resistance. There is no consistent pressure on ball handlers at the point of attack. The help rotations are slow or non-existent. The transition defense, which is often the most telling indicator of a team's collective discipline, has been a persistent liability. In the loss to the Dallas Wings, a game in which Dallas finished with 107 points, the Fever's defensive breakdowns were not isolated to a single quarter. They were systemic. There was no ball denial in the half court. The Fever's perimeter defenders were routinely beaten off the dribble, and the interior did not provide a compensating deterrent. For a team that was sold to its fan base in part on White's reputation as a defensive-minded coach, the performance was difficult to reconcile. The offensive side of the ledger presents a different but equally visible set of concerns, and those concerns center largely on how Caitlin Clark is being used. Clark broke the WNBA record for the fastest player to reach 1,000 career points. That milestone is factual and significant, and it confirms what was already visible from her first season. She is an offensive talent of a rare kind, capable of creating advantages from range, off the dribble, and in transition. Her combination of shooting range and passing vision makes her most effective in systems that keep the ball moving, that use the pick and roll to stress defenses, and that give her the freedom to initiate. Under the current offensive structure, those qualities are being underutilized in ways that are observable in the box score and on film. Clark is frequently positioned away from the ball in half-court sets. The pick-and-roll sequences that defined her offensive value in college and in her rookie season are not a central feature of Indiana's half-court offense. She is being used in extended stretches as a catch-and-shoot perimeter option, a role that does not allow her to exert the same kind of control that makes her a matchup problem for opposing defenses. When she does attempt to create off the dribble, the results have been inconsistent. Part of that inconsistency can be attributed to the broader chemistry issues on the roster. Screens are not being set on time, cuts are not being honored, and the spacing that is required for her to operate in traffic is frequently absent. But those are correctable problems, and the coaching staff has not visibly corrected them. There is a parallel concern around Kelsey Mitchell that further complicates the offensive picture. Mitchell is a capable isolation scorer, and her ability to get to the rim and to the free throw line has value. The issue is not Mitchell's individual skill set, it is how her tendencies interact with the team's broader offensive structure. When Mitchell's isolation scoring is the primary point of emphasis in a possession, other players, including Clark, are left static on the perimeter. The offense becomes sequential rather than collective, and the defense is allowed to collapse and recover without being stretched. Aaliyah Boston, whose strength is in the post and in short roll situations off the pick and roll, has been used in ways that do not consistently put her in those positions. On some possessions, Boston has been forced into situations, including extended ball handling sequences, that are not aligned with her strengths. That is a structural problem, and it is the kind of problem that coaching staffs are responsible for preventing. The question of coaching authority has been raised independently by multiple observers. During the closing minutes of the Wings game, visible on the broadcast, it was assistant coach Austin Kelly, not White, who was drawing up plays in the huddle. White, standing nearby, was not directing the tactical response to a game that was in the process of being decided. That image has circulated widely and has reinforced a concern that was already present in the discourse around the team, that the coaching staff at the highest level may not have a clear and executable plan for late-game situations. Coaching staffs are complex, and dividing responsibilities between a head coach and assistants during timeouts is not in itself unusual. But the perception created by that moment, in a game that was already a focal point of criticism, has added to the skepticism surrounding White's command of the team in high-pressure circumstances. The physical condition of Clark has also become a topic of concern. Reports from multiple games this season have referenced ongoing physical issues, including a groin problem and separate lower back discomfort. The training staff has been managing these issues actively, and Clark has not missed significant game time, but she has been playing through pain that is visible in her movement patterns, in her lateral quickness on defense, in the sharpness of her first step in transition, and in the energy she projects during live play. The visual contrast with her collegiate career and with her strongest stretches from her rookie WNBA season has been noted by observers. The demeanor she is projecting, measured rather than animated, subdued at moments when her previous disposition would have been engaged, has prompted concern from fans who have followed her closely. There is a difference between the normal variance in an athlete's energy across a long season and a sustained shift in affect that persists across multiple games and multiple contexts. Whether that shift is primarily physical, primarily systemic, or some combination of both is not something that can be determined from outside the organization. What is visible is the cumulative effect, a player whose game is built on rhythm, timing, and confidence playing in a system that appears to be constraining all three. The broader organizational picture offers limited reassurance. The Fever had more resources, more visibility, and more expectation heading into this season than at any point in recent memory. The investment from the fan base was real. Attendance figures and the broader cultural attention around the team reflected a genuine and growing audience. That audience came with expectations that were shaped, in large part, by the performances Clark had delivered at every previous level of competition. Those expectations have not been met. The team that fans are watching is not using its primary asset in ways that reflect sound strategic thinking. The defense is not competitive by league standards. The losses are coming against teams that are not operating at a high level. The Wings game being illustrative, and the margin of defeat suggests a gap in preparation and execution rather than simply a gap in talent. The coaching staff's responsibility in this context is not a peripheral concern, it is central. A team with Clark, Mitchell, Boston, and the other pieces that were assembled this offseason should be competing at a higher level than what has been on display. The most logical explanation for the gap between personnel and performance is the deployment of that personnel, which is, by definition, a coaching function. Viewer response to the team's performance has tracked closely with what is appearing in the data. The volume of criticism directed at White, including widespread calls for a coaching change, reflects a fan base that has reached a specific conclusion about the primary source of the problem. That conclusion is not unanimous, and there are observers who attribute the team's struggles to the normal friction of roster integration and the compressed nature of the WNBA schedule. But the persistence of the same problems across weeks of competition has made the early season adjustment framing increasingly difficult to sustain. The specific grievances being expressed most consistently align with what is visible on film. The defense has no identity. The offense does not leverage Clark's strengths. The team appears to lack cohesion in the moments when cohesion matters most, late in games, in transition, and in the half-court sets that determine whether a possession produces points or a stop. These are not abstract critiques. They are observations about concrete, repeating patterns of performance. A coaching change mid-season carries its own set of risks. New systems require time to install, and the disruption of a transition can introduce short-term problems even when the long-term calculation is favorable. Those risks are real, and they are understood by the organization's decision-makers. Against that consideration, the organization must weigh the ongoing cost of continuing with a coaching situation that appears to be producing declining returns. If the patterns observed through this stretch of the season represent the ceiling of what this staff is capable of producing, the case for change becomes stronger as the season progresses and the window for meaningful improvement narrows. The talent on the roster is genuine. Clark is demonstrating it in the individual statistical markers, even within a system that is not fully utilizing her. Mitchell is capable of taking over games when given the structure to operate effectively. Boston, when deployed in situations that suit her skill set, is one of the better two-way big players in the league. The question is not whether this team has the personnel to compete. It does. The question is whether the current coaching structure has demonstrated the capacity to turn that personnel into a competitive unit. Through the available evidence, the answer to that question is not encouraging. The record for fastest player to 1,000 career points stands. The attendance figures represent the growth the league has been working toward for years. The infrastructure for something significant is present. What has not yet materialized is the on-court performance that would justify the expectation those inputs have created. This season is not over. The Fever have games remaining that could shift the trajectory, and teams have made corrections mid-season that produced meaningful results. Those corrections, when they occur, typically come from clear-eyed assessments of what is not working and decisive action to address it. Whether the Indiana Fever's leadership is prepared to make that kind of assessment and act on it will determine whether what is currently unfolding represents a correctable stretch or something more durable. The evidence available right now points toward a team that is not being coached to its potential. The players performing below their established levels, the tactical patterns that do not reflect the personnel available, and the visible physical and emotional toll on the team's most visible player all point toward the same structural conclusion. What the organization chooses to do with that conclusion is the question that the remainder of this season will answer. There is also the matter of what sustained losing does to a locker room over time. Rosters can absorb a difficult stretch early in a season with relatively limited damage to internal cohesion. Players understand that systems take time to install and that early losses do not define a team's ceiling. But when those losses extend across weeks without visible signs of tactical adjustment, and when the same structural problems reappear in game after game, the psychological effect compounds. Frustration sets in. Players begin making individual decisions that they would not make within a functioning collective system, and those individual decisions further undermine the collective system. It becomes self-reinforcing. The signs of that dynamic are present on the Fever's current roster. The isolation tendencies that have been a recurring feature of their half-court offense are partly a product of design, but they are also partly a product of players reverting to what they trust when the design play breaks down. When a team does not fully believe in its system, when the reads are unclear or the execution is inconsistent, individual players default to what they know. That is not a character flaw. It is a predictable response to an environment where the collective structure has not provided sufficient confidence. Rebuilding that confidence requires coaching interventions that go beyond the tactical. Players need to see that the staff recognizes what is happening, that the adjustments being made are responsive to the actual problems on the floor, and that the people responsible for the system have a credible path forward. None of those conditions are currently visible from the outside. The adjustments being made between games and within games have not produced measurable improvement in the areas most in need of it. The WNBA season is shorter than its NBA counterpart, which means the window for correction is narrower. A team that loses 2 months of a 40-game NBA season to misalignment can still recover and compete. In the WNBA, the same 2 months represent a significant portion of the competitive calendar. Time is not a resource the Fever can afford to continue spending on the hope that the current approach will eventually produce different results. The franchise's front office is aware of the scrutiny it is under. The level of public attention on this team, driven substantially by Clark's presence, means that the performance is being evaluated by an audience that extends well beyond the traditional WNBA fanbase. Decisions made in the coming weeks will be made in full view of that audience, and the outcomes will be assessed accordingly. What the Indiana Fever do with a historically talented roster, in a season that began with more resources and attention than the franchise has ever had, will say something durable about the organization's capacity to translate potential into results. The talent has not diminished. The opportunity has not closed. But neither will wait indefinitely while the same problems repeat themselves on the same floor.